All right, let's dive into a really wild thought experiment. What if we took the entire judicial system, judges, courts, prosecutors, the whole shebang, and turned it into one single publicly traded company? Yeah, you heard that right. Welcome to Justice Corp.
You've heard this question before, right? It's ancient, but it gets to the core of a huge problem in any democracy. I mean, how do you keep the most powerful people in check? The judiciary is supposed to be that final backstop, the ultimate arbiter of power. But what happens? What do we do when the watchers themselves are the ones who are corrupt or just plain slow and unaccountable?
And that right there is the problem this whole Justice Corp idea is trying to tackle head-on. Think about it. When a court case drags on for years and years, that's not just some bureaucratic headache, it's a total system failure. It basically punishes the innocent, and, let's be honest, it's a get-out-of-jail-free card for anyone rich enough to just wait it out. And the argument here is that these kinds of systems, they almost never, ever fix themselves from the inside.
So here's the big twist, the big paradigm shift. What if we just stopped relying on these fuzzy, abstract ideas like duty and honor? Instead, what if we built a system on something way more predictable and maybe a little more reliable? Cold, hard, rational self-interest. Okay, so here's the foundational idea. The whole judicial system gets a complete makeover. It's restructured into one giant public company, we're calling it Justice Corp, and boom, it's listed right on the stock exchange. The courthouse is no longer just a courthouse, it's now corporate HQ. And justice itself, it's not just an ideal anymore. It's an asset, an actual asset with value that you can track in real time. So how does this all kick off? Well, with an IPO, an initial public offering. The government takes a big chunk of Justice Corp, let's say about 30 to 40%, and puts it right out there on the open market. And that means anyone, and I mean anyone, from a massive pension fund to you, an individual, can literally buy shares and own a piece of the justice system. Now, the ownership structure here is absolutely critical. The state hangs on to the majority, like 60 to 70%, using special shares that have all the voting power. Think of them as the "we're still in charge" shares. The shares that you and I can buy on the market, they're different. They give you ownership, a right to the profits, but no say in how things are run. And there's a brilliant reason for this. The government keeps strategic control, but it offloads the risk and, this is the important part, the oversight onto the entire market.
Okay, and this is where things get really interesting. The stock price of Justice Corp basically becomes a real-time, totally transparent scoreboard for public trust. If the courts are running smoothly, being fast and fair, what happens? Public confidence goes up, people buy in, and the stock price soars. But the second a corruption scandal hits or the system just grinds to a halt, that trust vanishes. Investors dump their shares, and the stock price absolutely tanks. All of a sudden, justice isn't some lofty ideal we talk about, it's a number on a screen with its own ticker symbol.
All right, so you've got this public company. But how do you make sure the actual employees, the judges, the prosecutors, everyone working inside the system are actually working for the public good? Simple. You give them skin in the game. You literally make them owners.
Think about the old way of doing things. A judge gets a fixed salary, right? It doesn't matter if they're brilliant or terrible, the paycheck is the same. But in this new system, a huge chunk of their pay isn't cash, it's shares in Justice Corp. It's an employee stock ownership plan, or ESOP. And just like that, their personal wealth, their retirement, their kids' college fund, it's all directly tied to how well they and the entire system actually perform.
And this creates an unbelievably powerful incentive structure. Let's say one judge gets caught taking a bribe. In this world, that isn't just a PR nightmare or a stain on the court's honor. No, it's an immediate, direct hit to the stock price. And what does that mean? It means every single one of their coworkers, from the top prosecutor all the way down to the newest court clerk, watches their own personal savings go into a nosedive. Suddenly, being corrupt, or even just lazy, isn't a moral failing. It's a financial attack on your friends and colleagues. And that's policed by the most powerful force on earth, peer pressure.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. What's to stop this whole thing from just being manipulated? Aren't we just swapping judicial greed for corporate greed? It's a fair question. And the answer in this model is what you could call a market immune system. And it's built on two things: radical transparency and swift financial punishment.
Here's how it works. The whole system is built to be completely transparent. After every single trial, the key data, but anonymized of course, gets published for the whole world to see. We're talking decision logic, timelines, evidence, everything. And what this does is it creates basically a global army of auditors. Anyone,
A huge hedge fund, a data journalist, a nonprofit group, they can all dig into this data and hunt for any signs of bias, inefficiency, or straight-up corruption.
Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine Justice Corp is a cybersecurity firm. In that world, corruption is like a virus, a bug in the code. And all those market auditors, they're like white hat hackers, the good guys who are actually paid to find and expose those bugs. So the big question is, how do they get their pay? The answer is short selling. It's a way to bet against the company. So let's say that NGO we mentioned finds a clear pattern of bias sentencing in one city. They can short the stock. Then they publish their report with all the data to back it up. The market sees the proof, people sell, the stock price drops, and that NGO makes a profit for exposing the rot. It's a beautiful, self-correcting loop. The market itself punishes failure and rewards the watchdogs. And get this, if someone tries to game the system with a fake report, other investors will see the public data, realize it's a lie, buy up the cheap stock, and the manipulator gets absolutely crushed.
But what if a problem is just too big, too systemic for even the market to fix? What happens when the whole system is at risk? For that, the model has a final failsafe, a nuclear option, if you will. And this power isn't held by the market, it's held by the government's legislative branch.
And look, this isn't something they can just do on a whim because they don't like a ruling. It follows a very strict, deliberate protocol. Step 1, one part of the legislature has to sound the alarm. Step 2, the executive branch comes in and does the math, calculating the real-world impact. And only then, step 3, the other legislative chamber takes a final vote. It's a whole system of checks and balances designed specifically to stop it from being used as a political weapon.
And that final vote, it's not a simple majority. It requires a supermajority. We're talking a 75% threshold. That high bar makes sure this ultimate power, the power for the government to financially punish its own judiciary, is saved for only the absolute worst-case scenarios, the truly dire, system-threatening emergencies. It's a constitutional failsafe, plain and simple.
So let's bring this all together. At its heart, the Justice Corp idea is a complete break from tradition. It's basically saying that justice is way too important to be based on faith in people, faith in institutions. Instead, it argues that justice should be treated like a measurable asset, a public good whose value has to be defended every single second of every day by everyone who has a stake in it.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative question to chew on. What we've described here is a system, a machine really, where all the incentives are perfectly aligned. A system where the only way for a judge to get rich is by being fair and earning the public's trust. It's a world that doesn't run on human virtue. It runs on transparent code and the cold, ruthless logic of the market. So what would a society like that actually look like? It's a fascinating and maybe even a little unsettling idea to think about.